Li Wei woke with a gasp. His eyes fluttered open and he found himself lying on the forest floor, the ground beneath him damp and cool. He could feel the moisture seeping through his clothes, chilling his skin. The sensation was so vivid, so real, that it took him a moment to process it. His head spun, a dizzying carousel of disjointed images. Where was he? The last thing he remembered was the blinding headlights of an oncoming car, the screech of tires, and then darkness. Now he was here, in this strange, otherworldly place. He tried to piece together the fragments of his memory, but they slipped through his fingers like sand. The air hung thick and humid, a symphony of unfamiliar scents assaulting his nose. It was a heady mix of earth foliage and something sweetly floral. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself, but the richness of the air only made his head spin more. It was so different from the sterile, antiseptic smell of the hospital room he had been in. Gone was the sterile smell of the hospital room, replaced by the earthy aroma of something else entirely. It was as if he had been transported to another world, one that was alive and breathing in a way that the hospital never could be. The scents were so strong, so overpowering, that they seemed to wrap around him, pulling him deeper into this strange reality. He pushed himself up, his hands sinking into soft, damp earth. The ground was spongy beneath his fingers, and he could feel the life teeming within it. Tiny insects scurried away from his touch, and he could see the delicate roots of plants weaving through the soil. It was a world within a world, a microcosm of life that he had never noticed before. Towering trees, their trunks impossibly wide, stretched towards the sky, their leaves a kaleidoscope of colors he couldn't name. The canopy above was a riot of hues, from deep emerald greens to vibrant purples and blues. It was as if the forest was alive with color, each leaf and branch a brushstroke in a living painting. He had never seen anything like it. Vines, thick as his arm, snaked around the trees, their surfaces pulsing with an eerie internal light. The light seemed to move within the vines like liquid fire, casting strange shadows on the forest floor. It was both beautiful and unsettling, a reminder that this place was not like any he had known before. The vines seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat, a silent rhythm that connected him to the forest. Panic clawed at his throat. He was alone in this strange alien world, with no idea how he had gotten here or how to get back. The forest seemed to close in around him, the trees and vines pressing in on all sides. He could feel his heart racing, his breath coming in short, shallow gasps. He had to find a way out. But where could he go? This wasn't Earth. This couldn't be Earth. The plants, the colors, the scents, everything was too different, too strange. It was like stepping into a dream or a nightmare. He had to be dreaming, didn't he? But everything felt so real, so vivid. He could feel the dampness of the ground, the rough bark of the trees, the cool air on his skin. If this was a dream, it was unlike any he had ever had before. The memories of his accident, the searing pain, the frantic shouts of the paramedics. It all felt like a lifetime ago. He could still hear the sound of the sirens, the voices calling out to him, the feeling of being lifted onto a stretcher. But those memories seemed distant, like they belonged to someone else. Now, all that mattered was this strange new world he found himself in. Was he dead? Was this the afterlife? The thought sent a shiver down his spine. He had never given much thought to what came after death, but he had never imagined it would be like this. He had always pictured something more ethereal, more peaceful. This place was beautiful, yes, but it was also wild and untamed, full of dangers he couldn't even begin to imagine. A strangled sob escaped his lips. He was alone, completely and utterly alone. The realization hit him like a physical blow, and he could feel the tears welling up in his eyes. He had never felt so isolated, so cut off from everything he had ever known. The forest seemed to echo his loneliness, the silence pressing in on him from all sides. Lost in a world that felt both beautiful and terrifying. The forest was a place of contrasts, of light and shadow, of beauty and danger. He could feel the pull of it, the way it seemed to draw him in, to make him a part of it, but he also felt the fear, the uncertainty of what lay ahead. He was a stranger in a strange land, with no map, no guide, and no way home. Despair threatened to consume him, a black hole pulling him into its depths. He could feel it, the way it seemed to wrap around him, to drag him down, but he couldn't give in. He had to find a way to survive, to find a way out of this place. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself, to push back the fear. He had to keep moving, to keep searching. There had to be a way out. There had to be hope. Just as despair threatened to engulf him, A soft chime echoed in his mind. He jerked back, startled. The sound, ethereal and melodic, seemed to originate from within his own head. Before he could react, a translucent blue screen flickered into existence before his eyes. Symbols, sharp and angular, scrolled across the screen, accompanied by a series of rapidly shifting numbers. It looked like something out of a science fiction film, utterly alien yet strangely familiar. The symbols shifted, resolving themselves into a language he could understand. System initializing. Synchronization complete. Welcome, Li Wei. The words hung in the air, a lifeline in the chaos of his thoughts. A system? What system? The initial shock gave way to a cautious curiosity. Li Wei had always been a dreamer, someone who found solace in the pages of fantasy novels. The idea of systems magic and otherworldly adventures had always fascinated him, but now, standing in the middle of a forest, he was faced with the reality of it all. He'd read about systems in those fantasy novels he devoured in his spare time, but this was real. The words on the pages had come to life, and he was the protagonist of his own story. The forest around him seemed to hum with energy, as if it too was aware of the significance of this moment. Was this his second chance, the opportunity he thought he'd lost? Life had not been kind to Li Wei, and he often found himself yearning for a fresh start, a way to rewrite his story. Now, with the system's guidance, he wondered if this was the path to redemption he'd been seeking. Begin basic meditation, the system instructed, its voice flat and emotionless. Focus your mind. The command was simple yet profound. Meditation was not something Li Wei had ever seriously considered, but the system's directive left no room for doubt. Visualize the flow of energy within your body. The system's voice was calm, almost soothing, as it guided him through the process. Li Wei took a deep breath, trying to clear his mind of the chaos that had been his constant companion. The screen flickered, displaying a simple diagram of a human figure, lines of light pulsing beneath its skin. It was a visual representation of what he needed to achieve, a roadmap to inner peace and strength. Li Wei hesitated, then slowly lowered himself back onto the forest floor. The ground was cool and damp beneath him, a stark contrast to the warmth of the sun filtering through the trees. He closed his eyes, following the system's instructions. His initial attempts were clumsy, his mind a whirlwind of doubts and fears. The noise of the forest seemed to amplify his inner turmoil, making it difficult to focus. The noise of the forest seemed to amplify his inner turmoil, making it difficult to focus. But he persisted, determined to see this through. But as he persisted, a strange sense of calm began to settle over him. The doubts and fears that had plagued him started to fade, replaced by a growing sense of clarity. The energy within him began to flow more freely, and he could feel the connection between his mind and body strengthening. With each breath, he felt more in tune with the world around him. The forest, once a backdrop to his confusion, now seemed to embrace him, its energy merging with his own. Li Wei realized that this was just the beginning of his journey, a first step towards mastering the system and unlocking his true potential. As he opened his eyes, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The system's first lesson had been a success, and he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The forest, with its ancient wisdom and boundless energy, had become his ally. And with the system's guidance, Li Wei knew he could achieve greatness. The chaos in his mind gradually subsided, like the calming of a stormy sea. Each breath he took seemed to draw out the turbulence, replacing it with a serene stillness. The cacophony of thoughts that had once plagued him now faded into the background, leaving behind a tranquil silence, replaced by a newfound clarity. It was as if a fog had lifted, revealing a path he had never seen before. His mind, once a tangled web of confusion, now felt like a clear, open sky. He could think, he could plan, and most importantly, he could hope. He could sense it now, a faint energy, a subtle hum that resonated with the very core of his being. It was an energy that connected him to the world around him, to the trees, the earth, and the sky. It was as if he had tapped into a hidden reservoir of strength, like a warm current flowing beneath his skin. This energy was not just a physical sensation, it was a spiritual awakening. It was a reminder that he was part of something greater, something vast and infinite. The warmth spread through his body, filling him with a sense of peace and purpose. It was weak, barely a flicker, but it was there. This tiny spark was a beacon of hope, a sign that he was not alone. It was a promise of potential, a hint of the power that lay dormant within him. All he needed to do was nurture it, to let it grow. A spark of hope ignited within him. It was a small flame, but it burned brightly, illuminating the darkness that had once consumed him. This hope was a lifeline, a guiding light that would lead him through the challenges ahead. He wasn't sure where he was or how he'd gotten here. The forest around him was unfamiliar, a labyrinth of trees and shadows, but despite the uncertainty, he felt a strange sense of belonging. This place, though unknown, felt like a sanctuary, or how he'd gotten here. His memories were a blur, fragments of a past life that seemed distant and unreal. But he knew that the past was behind him, and what mattered now was the present. He had been given a chance to start over, to forge a new path. But one thing was certain, he was alive, and this system, this strange alien presence in his mind, was his guide. It was a mysterious force, an enigma that he didn't fully understand. But he trusted it, for it had brought him this far. This strange alien presence in his mind offered him a chance to start anew. It was a gift, a second chance at life. He could feel its influence, guiding his thoughts, shaping his actions. It was a partnership, a symbiosis that promised growth and transformation, offered him a chance to start anew, to become something more than he ever thought possible. This was not just about survival, it was about evolution. He had the opportunity to transcend his limitations, to become a better version of himself, to become something more than he ever thought possible. The possibilities were endless, and the only limit was his imagination. He felt a surge of determination, a resolve to seize this opportunity with both hands. He would not let fear hold him back. As he emerged from his meditation, the forest seemed less daunting, the air a little sweeter. The world around him was no longer a threat, but a place of wonder and potential. He felt a connection to the earth beneath his feet, to the sky above, and to the life that thrived around him. The forest seemed less daunting, the air a little sweeter. Each breath he took was a reminder of his resilience, his ability to adapt and overcome. The forest, once a maze of uncertainty, now felt like a canvas on which he could paint his future. The air a little sweeter. He had nothing but the clothes on his back and the system's guidance, but it was enough. He didn't need material possessions or external validation. All he needed was his inner strength and the will to persevere. He had nothing but the clothes on his back and the system's guidance, but it was enough. This simplicity was liberating, a reminder that true power came from within. He was free from the burdens of his past, ready to embrace the future with open arms. A seed of resolve had been planted within him, taking root in the fertile ground of his newfound determination. This resolve was a promise to himself, a vow to never give up. He would face whatever challenges came his way with courage and tenacity, taking root in the fertile ground of his newfound determination. He would survive. He would thrive. This was not just about getting by, it was about flourishing, about reaching his full potential. He was ready to embrace the journey ahead. This was his second chance, and he wouldn't waste it. He had been given a gift, a rare opportunity to rewrite his story. He would make the most of it, living each day with purpose and passion, and he wouldn't waste it. With a heart full of hope and a mind clear of doubt, he stepped forward, ready to face whatever lay ahead. This was his moment, his time to shine.